In this speech at the UN, Finnish President Alexander Stubb delivers a powerful message about the state of our world. From the failures of the United Nations to the wars in Ukraine and Gaza, let's see what he said and why it matters for global peace.
War is always a failure of humanity. It is a collective failure of our fundamental values. It is a failure of us as human beings. Thirdly, I would like to say a few words about the state of the United Nations, the institution where we are. The UN was created to maintain and promote peace, stability, development, and friendly relations among nations. In order to achieve this, the balance between the three elements was required. The power at the highest level was represented by the UN Security Council. The interests of the wider membership were reconciled here in the General Assembly, and the values were enshrined in the Charter and consolidated as rules of international law. Now, unfortunately today, the UN is struggling to fulfill its central promise of delivering peace and stability. We can always blame each other, but at the end of the day, it's a collective decision. Countries have increasingly taken the liberty to break the rules of international law and to use force against other people's territories and suppress other nations. The United Nations of today does not sufficiently reflect the realities of the balance of power. All too often it fails to serve as a forum for the coordination of interests, and the values at its core are too often not respected in good faith. We all want to have the freedom to make choices and a possibility to influence the world around us. Today, many countries are seeking answers in multipolarity or transactionalism. If the UN fails to deliver, this trend will accelerate. So, let me sum up in the terms of the three pillars: values, interests, and power. Our values can divide us. Fundamentally, however, they should unite us around the basic principles of humanity, the rule of law, and the prohibition of aggression. Our interests differ, and it's only right that we promote them. However, our choices have consequences. Opportunism will eventually be forced to confront the problems it tried to ignore. Power will constantly seek a new balance. We must adapt to change. Nevertheless, we should not allow the rise of hard power to blind us. The power of legitimacy, integrity, and rules will remain strong.
Here, Stubb moves from a broad critique of global governance to specific conflicts, first addressing Russia's war in Ukraine, then the devastating humanitarian crisis in Gaza. His words reveal how these two conflicts reflect deeper challenges to the international order.
Proposal to solve the world's most pressing problems. However, the current direction is wrong in so many ways. There are more wars than at any time since World War II. The world is becoming increasingly divided. And so are our societies, and the measures to deal with climate change and sustainable development are lagging behind. In different parts of the world, we're witnessing immense civilian suffering and blatant disrespect for humanitarian principles. For me as a Finn, Russia's war of aggression in Ukraine not only reminds me of our past, but is directly linked to the security of the part of the world where I live. On the other hand, there is aggression and total disregard for civilian life, and an attempt to undermine the fundamental principles on which the international order is based. On the other hand, there's a bastion of freedom that is defending its right to exist and to make its own choices. The battle for what consequences we will draw from this aggression is not yet over. Recently, there's been serious attempts at diplomatic solutions of the war on the initiative of the United States. There are no perfect solutions to wars. At the same time, we know that any decision made in these matters will have far-reaching consequences in Ukraine and beyond. There can hardly be a stronger unifying interest among the UN's broad membership than our opposition to the wars of conquest. Aggression must not be rewarded. Accountability for the most serious international crimes must be pursued. In the Middle East, civilians in Gaza are experiencing immense suffering. The deepening humanitarian crisis has reached unbearable levels and represents a failure of the international system. At the same time, Hamas continues to hold the hostages it has taken, and many have already lost their lives. An immediate ceasefire is needed in Gaza. That has been reiterated from this podium many times today and yesterday. Humanitarian aid must be granted safe and unhindered access. The hostages must be released. I commend the efforts led by France and Saudi Arabia to advance the two-state solution. The negotiations must meet the Israeli and Palestinian security needs and Palestinian right to self-determination, its legitimate aspiration for statehood and sovereignty.
President Stubb's speech is a reminder that war and instability aren't just regional issues. They're tests of our shared humanity. What do you think the UN's role should be in addressing these crises? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe.